If Richard Nixon defined the 70s and Bill Clinton defined the 90s, Ronald Reagan defined the 80s. Reagan would call for a new era of hope and prosperity for the nation. It took the form of a new kind of economic policy, the trickle-down theory of economics.
The American people now want us to act, and not in half measures. They demand, and they've earned, a full and comprehensive effort to clean up our economic mess. Because of the extent of our economy's sickness, we know that the cure will not come quickly, and that even with our package, progress will come in inches and feet, not in miles. But to fail to act will delay even longer and more painfully the cure which must come. And that cure begins with the federal budget. And the budgetary actions taken by the Congress over the next few days will determine how we respond to the message of last November 4th. That message was very simple. Our government is too big and it spends too much. For the last few months, you and I have enjoyed a relationship based on extraordinary cooperation. Because of this cooperation, we've come a long distance in less than 3 months. I want to thank the leadership of the Congress for helping in setting a fair timetable for consideration of our recommendations. And committee chairmen on both sides of the aisle have called prompt and thorough hearings. We have also communicated in a spirit of candor, openness, and mutual respect. Tonight, as our decision day nears, and as the House of Representatives weighs its alternatives, I wish to address you in that same spirit. The option, I believe, offered by the House Budget Committee will leave spending too high and tax rates too high. At the same time, I think it cuts the defense budget too much. And by attempting to reduce the deficit through higher taxes, it will not create the kind of strong economic growth and the new jobs that we must have. Let us not overlook the fact that the small independent businessman or woman creates more than 80% of all the new jobs and employs more than half of our total workforce. Our across-the-board cut in tax rates for a 3-year period will give them much of the incentive and promise of stability they need to go forward with expansion plans calling for additional employees. Tonight, I renew my call for us to work as a team, to join in cooperation so that we find answers which will begin to solve all our economic problems and not just some of them. The economic recovery package that I've outlined to you over the past few weeks is, I deeply believe, the only answer that we have left. Reducing the growth of spending, cutting marginal tax rates, providing relief from overregulation, and following a non-inflationary and predictable monetary policy are interwoven measures which will ensure that we have addressed each of the severe dislocations which threaten our economic future. These policies will make our economy stronger, and the stronger economy will balance the budget, which we're committed to do by 1984. When I took the oath of office, I pledged loyalty to only one special interest group: we the people. Those people, neighbors and friends, shopkeepers and laborers, farmers and craftsmen, do not have infinite patience. As a matter of fact, some 80 years ago, Teddy Roosevelt wrote these instructive words in his first message to the Congress: "The American people are slow to wrath, But when their wrath is once kindled, it burns like a consuming flame. Well, perhaps that kind of wrath will be deserved if our answer to these serious problems is to repeat the mistakes of the past. The old and comfortable way is to shave a little here and add a little there. Well, that's not acceptable anymore. I think this great and historic Congress knows that way is no longer acceptable. The poet Carl Sandburg wrote, "The Republic is a dream. Nothing happens unless first a dream." And that's what makes us as Americans different. We've always reached for a new spirit and aimed at a higher goal. We've been courageous and determined, unafraid and bold. Who among us wants to be first to say we no longer have those qualities? That we must limp along, doing the same things that have brought us our present misery. I believe that the people you and I represent are ready to chart a new course. They look to us to meet the great challenge, to reach beyond the commonplace and not fall short for lack of creativity or courage. Someone you know has said that he who would have nothing to do with thorns must never attempt to gather flowers. But we have much greatness before us. We can restore our economic strength and build opportunities like none we've ever had before. As Carl Sandburg said, all we need to begin with is a dream that we can do better than before. All we need to have is faith, and that dream will come true. All we need to do is act, and the time for action is now. Thank you.
Reagan needed someone to carry out his new economic philosophy, and that person was Alan Greenspan. He defined the economics of the 80s. Appointed chairman of the Federal Reserve by Reagan in 1987, he was said to be the most powerful man in America during the last decade of the 20th century. Under Greenspan's guidance, the United States economy flourished in the 90s. Americans prospered more than in any other period of the country's history. Reagan also knew that if he was going to challenge and defeat the evil empire, the Soviet Union, he would have to bring back America's military might and place it on a sound footing. America needed a military victory. The opportunity arose in 1983. After 37 years of struggle against communism, the United States finally won a military conflict with a communist adversary. Though a small victory, it started the American military on the road to rebuilding its confidence. It was the Battle of Grenada. After fighting communism to a draw in Korea and losing in Vietnam, the American military suffered further humiliation when in 1979, Iranians stormed the American embassy in Tehran, taking 66 hostages. A military operation to free them ended in disaster. In October 1983, Reagan's decision to pull American troops out of Beirut, Lebanon, after a suicide bomber left 241 Marines dead, further diminished American prestige as one of the world's military superpowers. On October 12, 1983, the Caribbean island of Grenada underwent a military coup. The new government was pro-Cuba and Marxist. President Reagan and Secretary of State George Shultz invoked the Monroe Doctrine in their decision to intervene and restore order and democracy. On October 25th, American troops landed, engaging the rebel fighters, which included Cuban soldiers, and began evacuating 700 American citizens. In 4 days, the fighting was over, and America claimed victory. U.S. casualties were 18 dead and 38 wounded. More positive military experiences followed. In 1986, President Reagan sent American warplanes to bomb the palace of Libyan leader Muammar al-Gaddafi for backing terrorist attacks against Americans. Part of the new American military growing superiority was the integration of computer technology with weaponry. This was the single greatest factor in the 80s in shifting the balance of power from the Soviet Union to the United States.